Hey everyone, and welcome back to Lecture 1 for VLOOKUPs and HLOOKUPs. So this is a pretty exciting lecture. We're actually going to be getting into one of the more well-known formulas in Excel and Google Sheets alike. What is a VLOOKUP? I think a lot of people are probably wondering what it even stands for. Well, a VLOOKUP is a fancy way of saying find my values matching pair within the same row. So if I have two parallel data sets, aka two parallel columns, let's say A and B, and in A, I have a bunch of user IDs, and in B, I have a bunch of names. So I have a unique identifier, right? That's the user ID. And then I have a name that's going to give me, the actual information that's important to me as a human being, because I can't just read an ID and know exactly who it is. So I'm going to look vertically down those rows using this formula, find the ID, right? That matches an ID that I'm looking for, and then return whatever that name is that's next to it in the same row. Cool. So we're going to get into the actual implementation of the formula in a second here, but I just want to give you that visual. Looking vertically down the row, finding the ID, and finding its partner. So they typically require 4 inputs to work. You need a lookup value. So in this case, you need an ID to look up. You need to actually have a reason for looking something up. And in my example where I have the list of IDs and the list of names, let's say I have an ID that's a random number like 75423 or whatever. And I want to know 75423, what is your name? Well, I don't know. So that's my lookup value, that ID. Then I need to look it up in that table that I was just discussing and describing, the A and B table with IDs and names. Let's say it has 1 million different rows. So I need to highlight all those 1 million different rows for A and B. Then I have my column index number. So column index number is a fancy way of saying what column do I care about? What column has the information that I care about? So in this case, it is the name column. And lastly, range lookup. So how good does the match need to be? Well, we probably want an exact match, so you're going to put false. And here's kind of a description of that. I didn't use the ID, but I did use favorite food. So you have your search term, search range, column number, exact or approximate. So equals VLOOKUP. And in this case, let's say you're looking up somebody's favorite food. And in A1 to Z10, you have all this food characteristics, or all these people's names in column 1, their favorite food in column 2, and all this other stuff. So I'm looking up favorite food, and I want to look in column 2, and I find dumplings. What is an HLOOKUP? Well, an HLOOKUP is just a horizontal lookup. Remember how I said we're looking vertically down rows? And again, we're going to get into an actual example where it will make more sense. But VLOOKUP is looking horizontal or vertically down rows. Oh, HLOOKUP is looking horizontally across columns. So again, exactly 4 inputs, same exact kind of structure here, except instead of a column index number, now you have a row index number. To be honest, this is straight up, this is not the best way to describe this formula. It's very much a visual one. So let's get into the spreadsheet. All right, so if you'll navigate over to the Section 8 Lookups workbook, you're going to see a data set that looks like this. You have your example 1, which is a list of responses from different guests that you've invited to a party. Let's say that I'm throwing a rager that's pretty awesome and I want to invite like 50 people. And I want to know, are all those 50 people going to come? And I have some guests of honor. I have people I really care about coming to this and I want to make sure that they're there because the party won't be fun otherwise. So I have Tad Gaffney. I've got, Blackbeard the Pirate. I've got Bertrand Plumbernall, whoever that is. But I've got all these people who I really care. So are they attending? I don't know. They're in this big list over to my left. So I want to know. So I do equals VLOOKUP. My search key is Tad, right? I'm looking for Tad and what he said. Did he say yes or no? And then I'm going to go ahead and say in the range, it's going to be my respondents. But you know what? Just to cover what we did last time, we're going to do B and C. We're going to name this range. So let's name it. And we're going to name it guest list, which I've already done. So we're going to do equals guest list. And you can see it highlights all my stuff. And in my guest list, I'm going to do equals VLOOKUP. And it's Tad. Good old Tad Gaffney. And I'm looking in my guest list. I've already named the range, so you should do so as well. I think it should already be named for you, but guest list is our range, and then our index, in this case, is going to be column 2. So we have B is column 1, and C is column 2. So it's 2, because we want to know his response. And then we want to know false. We want it to be an exact match. You can see, if I go here, it says yes, because if it's not an exact match, it'll find something like Tad Gaffney, who might be the same number of characters or something like that. And you want to make sure that it's exact, so you need to put false. And you can see Tad is not coming. So I'm pretty bummed out. I really wanted Tad to attend, but he won't be there. So let's check the rest of my guests. Oh man, Blackbeard's not coming either. He's not even found in the evaluation. All right, so this is the next step. Now that we know how to implement the formula, if error I taught you in the last section is going to come in handy when you use this formula, because I have no's and yeses, but what happens when that person isn't in the list? Well, it's going to give you an error and it's going to say, well, they're not there. So a lot of times you'll get an error and you'll want it to return something that doesn't just say #NA. So we're going to go ahead and add an if error, and we're going to say didn't get the invite or didn't RSVP. Right? That means they didn't even give us an answer. I'm kind of bummed at that Blackbeard didn't do that, but now I have my answers for Tad. I have my answers for Alicia. Blackbeard didn't RSVP. Pete and Pete didn't RSVP. Bertrand Plumbernall. I mean, come on, man. Got to RSVP. But now I know exactly who did, who didn't, and who will attend. And if I want, now I can say yes, and I can count the number of people. Whoop. I can do like a count if, right? I can come up here, do my range, and say yes, right? How many people are actually coming in my guest of honors? 9. Ooh. Anyway, moving on to the next thing, HLOOKUP. So this one's a little weirder. You can see the titles for the different data points are on the left instead of on top. I'm going to tell you right now that in almost every example you will ever use, your data titles will be on the top and not to the left. For really long lists, they will almost always be on the top. Because how many people want to scroll over a million columns to find, the data you need? You're mostly going to put your records in vertically. So VLOOKUP. So anyway, in an HLOOKUP, just for fun here, we have Sid, and we have his ID, but we don't know what he scored on this test or whatever it was. So I want to know what Sid scored on his test. So I do equals HLOOKUP. And let's just pretend for a second that I couldn't match the ID right here. So we know we're looking for 87%, in which case we can check our work really fast. But we have HLOOKUP, and in this case we're looking for Sid's ID in this range here. I think I named it 2, but I honestly forgot what I named it. And then we have our index. So in this case it's row 2, right? Remember I said it's the row index number, not the column now. And false again. We want an exact match for that ID. And look at that. It returned Sid. Returned our good old 87%. B+. Well done. Last example here. And sorry, I'm kind of getting through this quick, but I want to make sure that we get to the activity as fast as possible so you guys can apply this awesome skill. So now I have a country list. And within this country list, I'm asking, what are the popular foods? And for your convenience, I looked up every country and all its popular foods over here to the right in columns S and T. So I'm going to use my VLOOKUP again. Remember, these are vertical ranges. So I'm going to use VLOOKUP. And my search key in this case is going to be the country name. So it's K2. I'm then going to look at the range I need. So I think I actually wrote country foods over here already. So yeah, I've already looked that up, and you can see it's VLOOKUP and HLOOKUPs S to T. That's exactly what I want. So it's country foods, and my index is 2, because within S and T, T is where the foods are. That's the things I care about. So I do 2, and I do false. Boom. Look at that. For China, you got Peking duck, lo mein, chow mein, la mian, fried rice, dumplings, Mao's braised pork. These are from Wikipedia. I do not take any credit for putting these down. But yes, these are quote-unquote popular foods. So let's copy this formula down. And some of you may be already thinking to yourselves, well, what if there's some errors? Shouldn't we be using the if error formula beforehand? Yes, you absolutely should. Rehab or prehab before you rehab. That's what I taught. So let's do it. Let's put an if error in. We'll copy it down again. But in this case, just say did not find. Find a food. And you can see we have all of our now foods returned, except for a few where it says did not find a food. And then what we could do to be even fancier is we could then highlight this column and put some conditional formatting rule in that says, you know, text contains did not find, right? And we could do some custom format where we, you know, color it red or something like that. And now if I go down, I can immediately find the countries that it didn't find. So South Sudan, Hong Kong, Congo. This is awesome. So that's it for this lecture. I just wanted to go through and really drive in some of those concepts quickly so that now that we get to this activity, which is an awesome activity, by the way, it's on housing demographics. Once we're kind of going through this activity, you're going to see exactly how to use these formulas, and it's extremely powerful. A lot of people have lists where they're looking up a specific thing from that list. Well, VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP are going to help you do that at hyperspeed. And then the next lecture after is going to be index match match, which in my opinion is a much better version of both of these formulas, but VLOOKUP can be really useful. Great job today. I'll see you in the activity in the next one. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the activity for section 8, the first activity. And this one's going to be just going over the basic VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP. So this one's quick. I want to help you get your bearings using these formulas and using them, really quickly together. So let's jump over to our spreadsheet. All right, so now that we've got our spreadsheet, you can see we're on section 8 lookups and we're on the activity housing demographics. Let me just change this color to blue, which should match your workbook now. So we have a list of names. So these are some people's names, some IDs, some addresses, and the year that these people moved into their houses. So this is some San Francisco addresses. These have nothing to do with anyone who actually lives there. So do not think that it has any realistic nature to it at all. And then we have the year and the rent increase. So how much did rent increase for those people year over year? Or since they moved in, sorry. So a lot of these are definitely understated, but it's just kind of a fun activity to figure out for these different people, what year did they move in and how much has their rent increased since they moved in? Seems like a boring thing, but it's actually a pretty interesting insight. So for years moved in, I've given you the opportunity to use a VLOOKUP. And for rent increase, I've given you the chance to use an HLOOKUP. I love those comments there, but if you figure that out independently, great job. So I'm going to give you a second here. Try and figure out all these different years moved in and all these different rent increases using these two formulas. All right, you guys are rad. So I'm going to get right into it. We're going to use a VLOOKUP. And in this case, we're looking for Myung Linares, I believe. And I already named this range, but we have tenant info, right, which is A to D. I named my ranges prehab before you rehab, and my index is 1, 2, 3, 4. In this range, it is the fourth column. So I'm going to put 4, and I'm going to put false. And I can check my work in a little bit, but for now I'm just going to kind of blaze through this, and then I'm going to use the HLOOKUP for rent increase, and my search key is again, I'm going to use years moved in as my search key, and then my range is going to be this right here, and my index is going to be row 1 or row 2. It's going to be row 2. And lastly, I'm going to do false because I want an exact match. Wow! Myung's rent has gone up quite a bit since 1985. And look at that. Agostina D'Alessio went up to, 8.2% since she moved in. And then you got Ellie McPhail, who's got, 4.3. So this is really cool. Now I know exactly the years they moved in and the amount their rent increased just using those two formulas. It took me about, 30 seconds or so to put these two things in. And now I have all this really cool information. And let's say that your list here, this is 350 people, but let's say it was 15,000. Instead of having to go down a list of 15,000 people and find this information, and then go and match these values to this, I just used two formulas and they did it for me. So you can see, you can start to imagine the possibilities. Great job in this activity. I know it was a short one, but we're going to have a lot of really good ones later. I'll see you in the next lecture where we're going to be learning the index, match, and match formula, which is, actually it's a massive combination of many formulas, but we're going to learn index first, then match, and then how to use them together. All right, guys, great job. See you in the next one. In this lecture, we're going to be going over index, match, match. Now, this is a fairly advanced formula. It actually combines three different subformulas, functions, into a massive 3-function formula. So we've been using multiple functions together, but this one is a combination that is kind of unparalleled. It's one that allows you to basically use a VLOOKUP or an HLOOKUP. You can go backwards, forwards. I'll show you kind of all of the different applications of it. But for bonus points, if you are an analyst, if you are somebody who just works in spreadsheets in general, and you show somebody that you know how to do an index match match, that's actually very big. That's a lot of people will be like, whoa, okay, you're very proficient in spreadsheets. So take note on this one. It's pretty useful, and it's actually brilliant the way that it's been constructed. So the first thing that I want to go over is index, right? Index is its own function. And index returns the contents of a cell specified by a row and a column coordinate. So that's a lot of fancy jargon. And what it really means is it basically returns the location of a cell if you put in the number of the row and the number of the column. Simple as that. So you have index equals index, some range, right? And then you have the row number and the column number. Simple as that. So you could have index A1 to A10, return me row number 3 and column number 1, and maybe it's dumplings that is in that cell. But that's all it is. So we'll go over it in a spreadsheet. Again, it's going to make a lot more sense when you see it in action, but I want to give you this context. So let's jump into the spreadsheet really quick just so I can show you what it is. All right, so if you're back on your spreadsheet and you're on your lecture 2 index match match, it's now kind of lecture 3, but anyway, if you go to this kind of area here, I just want to show you what index does. So let's go into a random cell here, and I type in index, and it says reference. So it returns the content of a cell specified by a row and a column, offset. And it says the array of cells to be offset into. What they mean is, what table are we looking at stuff to find? Where are we trying to find stuff? So let's just highlight this range, and we want row number, let's say 3, and column number 1. And that's going to give me Lynn Colligan. So row number 3, column number 1 in the range that I had highlighted, right? Simple as that. So that starts to make sense. Let's do another example just to drive this home. If I go to my country area and I type in, equals index, and then I just highlight, this area here. For my reference, I can type in my row is 2 and my column is 4. Or let's see, 3. There's not even 4 in there. And it gives me Southern Asia. But if I change it to 2, it gives me Asia. And if I change it to 1, it gives me India. if I go to 3, 4, 5, you can see how this kind of works, right? It's an index, and it's saying, what am I indexing from? What range am I looking at, basically? It's saying, what's the row number that I want to return, and what's the column number I want to return. Cool? Great. All right, so let's get back to the slideshow. So the next function that we're going to go over is match. And what that allows you to do is returns the position number of a matching term to your specified value. If you think about that, I don't know if you already know where I'm going with this, but index returns in some specified range, right? It gives you a result based on the row number and the column number. And what match does is it gives you the row number or column number of a specified row or column. So depending on whether it matches a term that you're looking for. All right, this is where the magic happens. Match is a search term. It's the range where you will find said search term, and then 1 or 0 depending on exact or approximate match, which is what we dealt with in VLOOKUP as well, right? So if I do match for dumplings and I have a range of A1 to A10, so a single column here, and I say exact, it gives me 3. Because remember in my index example, I did 3, 1, and it gave me dumplings. So it's giving me the row. It's saying dumplings is in row 3. Cool. So let's go to the spreadsheet again to show how this works. All right. So we're back in our spreadsheet here. And if you look, let's just say I want to return the row of, what's some random country? Maybe like Liberia. It's not a random country at all, but Michael Jackson has that Liberian Girl song, which is pretty cool. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and do equals match, and we're going to search for Liberia. And in this range, in K, and we want an exact match. So it's telling me it's in row 125. Now let's double check that. Liberia, it's in row 125. So you can see, it's going to give me the right row reference every time. So now let's look across a column. So let's say I want to find region. I want to find what column region is in this range. So I do equals match, and I'm going to search this top area. Doesn't matter how far I go. And then I'm going to say, oh, sorry, that's my range. I want region, right? And then I do an exact match, and it's telling me column 4, right? So we have a row here and column here. And if you kind of take this all at face value, it's returning my row reference and my column reference. Okay, we're getting somewhere. We're getting somewhere. So how is this relevant to VLOOKUP? How is this relevant to HLOOKUP? Here we go. I'm about to blow your mind. So if I go back to my slideshow again, it's the magic of post-production. But here I am back in my slideshow, and I have my index, which is going to be some range, right? Then I have my match, which is going to return me my row, and my second match, which will return me my column. I hope this is starting to make sense here. This is pretty novel, cool stuff here. So what index is going to do is, if we go back to my index slide here, it's going to take in some range, a row number and a column number, and instead of a row number and a column number, I'm not going to know the specific thing there, but I can use match to return the row and column location of a term. So, like VLOOKUP, it's going to return me exactly what the matching content that I want is for this value. All right, let's get into an actual activity where we can apply this. It's going to make a lot more sense. So I'm going to go back to my spreadsheet again. Here I am, yet again. And I'm going to go ahead and look at this attending list again. All right, I have the same problem. How am I going to figure out who's attending? Well, if you'll notice, these two column names match. Look at that. All right, so for index match match, I want to know if Tad Gaffney is attending. So I can do equals index, and then I want to do my guest list, which is B2 to C51. Then I do my row, which is going to be a match now, right? I'm matching where Tad Gaffney is, what row he's in here. So my search key is Tad, and then it's going to be B2 to B51, right? I should have named it, didn't name it, amateur move. And match again. And this time I want to match, because that's going to return the row of where Tad is. Now I need to return the column number. So in order to get the column number, I want to know what column has attending. So these two match, C and E. E1 and C1. So my search term is attending. My range is B1 to C1. And it's going to be an exact match. And boom, Tad Gaffney is not coming. And remember, it's always important to lock your stuff in. So in this case, I want to lock attending in. I want to lock my attending range in. But for this is easy. I just keep this as is, lock my range in, and I'm good to go. And so again, we're going to get that same list that we had with our VLOOKUP. And just to explain one more time what's going on here. So in a VLOOKUP, it's asking for a range, right? It's asking for the column that you're looking for to return the data in, and whether it's like an exact match, right? It's like an index, you have this number, and that's great. It works really well, and it's very easy to use. But what happens if you want to go backwards? So I'm going to go over this in the next lecture, but there's some limitations to VLOOKUP that you don't get with HLOOKUP, which is fantastic, or that you don't get with index match match. Also, the great thing about index match match is depending on the column names, if they're all matching, you can like copy it across multiple places, and you don't have to change the number that you're hard setting in there. Anyway, it's really cool. I'll show you some more examples of this, but then we can do the same thing we did in our other lecture, where we threw our if error in and said no RSVP or something, whatever we want to put in, and we have our list there. Great. Now I'm going to come over here. I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to do index, and my index is food, country foods. Thank goodness. My row is a match, right? And I want to match, in this case, the country name with, you guessed it, the country. And then I want my search type to be 0. And the same thing with the match on this thing here. So foods, I'm hoping, yep, I named them the same. So we have our search key, which is foods, our range, which is country and foods, and 0. And look at that, it returns the same thing. And I'm going to get ahead of it. I'm going to type in if error and say no food listed. And we're going to copy this down. Boom. It's amazing. It's amazing how that works. And a lot of people are probably thinking, why can't I just use a VLOOKUP? VLOOKUP seems so much easier. It's less inputs. It's less room for error. Yes, I agree. There are a lot of instances where VLOOKUP may be better, but index match match is much more versatile. You can go backwards, forwards, left, right. There's a lot of different ways you can use it. Anyway, now you understand what it is. You understand how to use it. It's a fantastic formula. And in the next lecture, we'll go over some actual activity to kind of run through it and use it and see why it is better in VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP. But great job in this lecture. I know it's a lot of information, multiple different functions learned, but you did a great job. I'll see you in the next one. Hey everyone, welcome back to the final activity of this section. So I kind of want to lead off with just letting you know, HLOOKUP, not really included in this activity whatsoever. It's a little bit of a trash formula. It's not super useful, so I didn't actually find a place to put it. I'd rather concentrate your time on something that's actually going to come in handy, which is the VLOOKUP and index match match. So if we flip over to our workbook, you're going to see that we have customer names, credit card type, date, credit card type, and date again for both the VLOOKUP and index match match formulas. So what I'm challenging you to do here is to find the type of credit card that these 3 customers used, and then find the date that they used them. I really want you to understand, how can I find this information really fast without having to scroll over to my list and go all the way down? So honestly, again, these are some really useful formulas, and they'll help you pull it really fast. So give it a shot right now, see what you can get done. I'm going to wait about 2 seconds, and then I'm going to start doing this myself. So the ultimate goal here, the first thing you want to ask yourself is, what am I trying to find? So I'm trying to find credit card type. So if I'm using a VLOOKUP, I've already got that guidance, so I know I'm using VLOOKUP. What is my search key here? Well, I know that I'm looking for a name, and I have my customer names over here, which are first names as well. So let's see if Patrick shows up. So I have my search key, which is Patrick, and I'm going to lock in the column here. Then I want my range, which is, in this case, customer name. Should have named the range. I suck and probably did that, but have forgotten by this point. Anyway, then I want to do my index. So what am I looking for? And actually the range here is going to be K to, let's do R. So we just have that whole section there. And then my index. So again, it's asking the column index value. So in this case, it's 1, or actually it's 2, because it's credit card type, right? And false. I want an exact match. And look at that. It gives me Patrick used Discover card. All right, so if I copy these down, I have American Express and MasterCard for Martine and Jan. So again, that was really easy. I just made sure to lock in my column here and my range for my my search range. And I got those 3. Excellent. So the next is date. Actually, let's do that with index match first. So index, this time I'm going to use the entire range. And you're going to see why I'm doing this in a second. I want to kind of show you the functionality of index match versus VLOOKUP here. That's kind of the main reason that I'm doing this in this activity. So I lock in my range and what row, right? So I use a match formula as we talked about. My search key is going to be Patrick. Then I have my range that I'm searching. So in this case, it's customer name. And my search type is 0. It's an exact match. And my column, look at that, credit card type matches credit card type. So I'm going to do another match. My search key is credit card type. My range is J1 to R1. And my search type is 0, right? Cool. So it also gave me Discover. And if I copy it down, same answers. Sweet. So we've used VLOOKUP now and index match to get the credit card types for these users. Well, it's duplicative information here. So let's look at the date and see if we can do the same thing. So search key is Patrick. My range is the same to R. My index is going to be, what column is it? 1, right? Because I'm trying to find date. And I want it to be false. And it's going to give me an error. And it's going to say, did not find Patrick in the VLOOKUP evaluation. So the issue here is VLOOKUP starts at an index. If I go over to this, it starts at an index of 1 from where your range begins. So if I'm highlighting J to R, it's going to search for my criteria in J, whatever this column is. So I'm matching the customer name, which is index 2, with something that is index 1, and that's going to be my search field. So it's not going to find Jake in date, right? And so I can't go backwards. That's the way to think about it. With VLOOKUP, you can't go backwards. If you have a huge range and you want to find that person in a specific column, but that column's in the middle of your range, VLOOKUP's not going to work. Because anything behind that, anything that's not K or greater in terms of column number, right, is going to return an error because it's searching the beginning of your range. That's why you always use index match. So right here, I'm going to just put an if error. So this is why it's better, right? It's a better function because index match allows you to go backwards or forwards. So check this out. Now, if I change, look at that. Because date matches date, index match is already finding it. So if I typed in like dumplings bot, and I copy that over, it's going to give me anything that matches the column. So I can return any information I want here for Patrick, Martine, or Jan, or any other name for that matter that I'm looking for in this list. So this is a really fancy function, and it allows you to be very versatile with your searching. You can look at date, you can look at anything now here as long as I copy this header and put it here. So stars and date, I've already done you that kind of solid here. I've already set that up for you. But now let's see what happens if I copy this formula just down here. Look at that, it's already giving me my answer. So the reason that this is not quite matching up is because it's still E3. But now if I change this to E10, E9, it's going to give me my ratings. If I do that same thing with VLOOKUP, it's going to give me these again, right? But it won't give me the date. Again, I can't go backwards, so this is a problem. So this activity wasn't a long one, but I really just wanted to get into your kind of thinking that VLOOKUP cannot go backwards, index match can. Index match is just more useful. Your search term here, you're going to have to change the number of your column over and over and over if you have many things that you're searching for. However, if you're in a quick situation where you know that the information that you're trying to return is on the right side of your search, so let's say it's anything on the right side here, which most often it will be, then VLOOKUP can be great because it's quick, and if you know just the one column you're trying to return information for, it's going to be your fastest route. So I'm not knocking VLOOKUP, I'm just saying that index match match is a more well thought out and more thorough formula. So that's it for this activity. I hope you understood what was going on there. Not as difficult as some of the other activities we had in the past, but extremely important to know the distinction between these two functions. It's really important for you to know when to use one or the other. I always use index match match because I know that it's going to work, but you don't have to if you want to use the VLOOKUP to be a little quicker. Again, HLOOKUP is a garbage formula. Don't use it. It's trash. Just forget about it. All the other ones, really useful. You know how to use all three now. So go have fun returning information fast, and I'll see you in the next section.